All right, so we finished measuring our papers out, getting them prepared so that we're able to line everything up on our paper when we're ready to cut and glue. So the next step that we need to take is we need to come up with a composition for our Notan. We're going to start with something pretty basic for this. We'll get into more complex ideas as we go, but I think it's a good idea to always start with something very simple when working with a Notan. So I'm going to flip this over just like you're going to do. So you're going to be working on the side of the black square that does not have the lines. So you're going to flip it over and you will notice that I've already drawn out my design for my Notan. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to sketch the same thing. So what I would recommend is that you are going to pause the video and you are going to look at the images of the arrows. So every single one of these is an arrow on the screen as you draw. Some things that I want to point out to you that's going to be important as you work on your Notan is that every single one of these shapes I can get cut out because they all hit the edge of a paper, okay? So if I were to come in here and draw a baby arrow, which would be lovely, if I drew a baby arrow in here, I now have a bit of a problem on my hands because if I don't have an X-Acto knife, I can't get in there with my scissors to cut this out. So every single one of these is hitting an edge. As you begin to develop your own Notan later, you're going to want to be thinking about creating a design that incorporates all four sides of the paper. So every single one of my arrows is touching an edge of the paper. That's something you're going to want to think about. So what I recommend you do now is go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to sketch out a design that's fairly close to mine. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I should see something very similar to this when I check your work. Once you're done with that, you're going to come back and we're going to talk about the next step. Okay, so you're going to come back as soon as you finish this and we'll talk about cleaning up these lines and what we're going to do to it next. Okay, so hopefully you've had time to finish this and you're back for the next step. So we could cut this out like this and that would be fine, but it wouldn't be nearly as interesting as a design like this. The difference between what you see with this and what you saw with the arrows is that we have these pieces of black that are put inside of these white chunks. In order to do that and have an effect similar to that, we're going to need to do a little bit more work to this design here. So in this design, to get an effect a little bit more like that, what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we are going to sketch in the shape of an arrow on the inside of an arrow we already drew. So I'm going to start by drawing lightly and also thinking about giving myself a thick enough edge that I'm going to be able to work with this and not have any issues when I go to cut. So I'm just sketching this in lightly, and then I'll also show you how I end up with these lines that look a lot more clean, a little bit more neat than what you see when I just sketch them in here. Okay, so I've sketched in the shape of an arrow. You can go back in and spend time adjusting and improving this. And what I'm going to do now is show you how I clean those lines up. So what I did is I took my ruler that we talked about before where I said, you know, you're going to want that ruler. If you don't have a ruler, remember that you can always use something with a straight edge, like a thick sheet of paper, a book, anything that has a really straight edge along it that you can line up. And again, I'm just using regular pencil right now. But if you're having trouble seeing your work, you can use a colored pencil that's like a white colored pencil or peach, pink, any of those should show up okay. I'm going to go the whole way to the edge of the paper because I'm going to still have to cut into this with scissors. And I need an entry point. So every single shape we draw, we need an entry point for our scissors. So that's why I'm working with everything hitting the edge that I'm putting in here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and draw the rest of these in. I'm probably going to shift my paper around a little bit. You're welcome to follow along with me, but I'm probably going to speed the video up for this. Okay, so I think I'm gonna leave it pretty much like this, and I don't think I'm gonna add anything into these. Now, you can go ahead and do that if you want to. If you wanted to add another arrow in or do an outline in these, you can. Let's get started on the next step. So we've gotten everything sketched out. I am gonna clean this line up a little bit. So let's talk about what I want you to have on hand. I personally find it helpful to have a scrap piece of paper to actually do my gluing on. So this is a scrap piece of paper that I've used for other projects in the past. It has some glue stuck to it. It looks really clean on the screen. It's actually not. So I'm gonna use this for my scrap paper to help me glue, and I'll talk about that in a second. And of course we need our scissors and we need our glue. So before I move on to that, I'm gonna finish cleaning up this line just so that when I go in with my scissors, I know exactly where I wanted these cuts to be made. So it's just helpful to me to clean that up. Okay, that's better. So now what we're going to do is we're gonna grab our scissors and we're gonna start cutting. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with this corner piece. I'll try and cut as much as I can on camera. And I'm gonna stay exactly on those pencil lines, and I wanna go nice and slow because we don't wanna cut into the rest of the paper. So our cutting skills are really gonna be important on this project. So I'm staying on the line and going really slowly. So every piece we cut, we keep. This is not gonna get thrown out. We're gonna set this down. We need that. If we lose that, we're gonna be in trouble. So we're gonna work one piece at a time, very slowly, and we're gonna keep every single piece of paper that gets cut. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our paper and we're gonna line this back up. Okay, so we just cut this out, right? So we're like, why, Mrs. Hunt, why are we lining this back up? Because this helps us to know where everything is going to be glued down. Okay, so with the Notan, what happens is as we make the cut, and this is exactly how this Notan started as well. Everything we cut is going to be used. So we don't want to lose any of those pieces. And we're going to line this back up because we're going to work one piece at a time. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out anything that I've drawn inside of the shape I just cut. So I'm going to pick this piece up and I'm going to go ahead and very carefully cut on the lines inside of here. Very, very carefully and very slowly. Okay, I'm gonna keep this. Don't throw it out, don't lose it, don't let your baby sister play with it. Don't let the dog chew on it, make sure you keep it. Okay, so I have all my pieces that I cut out, and what I'm gonna do is, just like it's a puzzle, I'm gonna put it back together, okay? So that's why we're only working one piece at a time, right? Because this takes a lot of focus, guys. It's not something I would do with a lot of distractions around. Okay, so we're kind of putting it all back together like a puzzle. And then this helps us to understand where each piece is gonna go. So what I'm gonna do is I am gonna flip this piece because it's a rotation, and it would go right here, okay? So this arrow is gonna go right there, and then I'm gonna line this up just so, okay? And we're making sure that the corners here are in those spots that we outlined, because that's gonna help us get all the placement right. Okay, now we're gonna take this piece and we're gonna flip it over this way as well. And it's gonna get lined up just like that. So before I glue anything down, I'm always flipping the pieces over and making sure that my placement is correct. Okay, so let's go ahead and glue this down. So let's watch how to do this. You are gonna need to be careful. Some of these pieces are pretty thin, and if you're not careful, they will definitely tear. So you want to take your time, be gentle, work slowly. So we're going to pick this piece up, and I'm going to put it on my scrap paper, turn it over, and put the glue on it. So again, this is something you really need to be in an area where you are focused. Don't do this when you're super tired. Don't do it when you're trying to talk to a bunch of other people. This is something that you really need to be focused for. So I've got my glue on there. And I'm gonna line this up exactly with those pencil lines I made. I'm gonna carefully press it down. Okay, so I'm gonna move this back over. And I know that this and this have to line up. So I want to get this placement right. This is harder to do unless I have this one in place. And I know it's going to touch the corner in here and here. So I'm going to pick this one up and I'm going to turn it over. And on my scrap paper, I'm going to put the piece down and then put the glue on. This is a thinner piece, so I'm going to be pretty careful when I pick it up. And there's a big chunk of glue here, so I'm just kind of picking that up and wiping it off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up here and this up with the edge of this one. I'm going to press that in place. Okay. All right, now I'm going to glue this piece. So I'm going to pick it up, bring it over to my scrap paper, turn it over, put my glue on the back. Make sure I'm spending a lot of time thinking about lining it up, getting the pieces to touch. I'm not rushing through putting this down, okay? This requires, again, attention and focus. So you want to be taking your time and being careful. All right, so now we can glue this piece on. So when I go to glue this piece on, I want to make sure this is lined up exactly where it goes, because that helps me. It's like putting a puzzle back together. So I know that it will go right there. So I'm going to pick this piece up, take it over to my scrap paper. I'm going to move my scrap paper because the area of my scrap paper I had been working had a little bit of glue on it. So now what I want to do is move to a new section, put the glue on. And for whatever, your scrap paper can be notebook paper, it can be a piece of paper that maybe you did a drawing on that you didn't like. So your scrap paper can really be anything. So I'm going to make sure this is lined up. I'm going to line this up right here. Make sure everything's in place. And then I'm going to just gently go over the paper with my finger. So you see how slowly and methodically I'm working, okay? That's going to be really important on this assignment. All right, now we can do the next arrow. Okay. So find your entry point. Okay, so I line this back up. And at some point here, I'm gonna speed up the video, but hopefully what you're seeing is that I work very slowly. I'm really taking my time. I'm really thinking about what I'm doing. Okay, so this is gonna get flipped over. It's a reflection. So I have a couple of choices. I can flip it and reflect it this direction. Okay, I can pick it up and I could flip it this direction. I can pick it up and flip it this way. Got to make some design choices here, guys. So you're gonna decide which way you want to flip that arrow. I think, for me personally, I think I'm still deciding. I'm definitely not gonna go this direction. I think I'm either gonna flip it here or on the bottom. So I'm gonna think about this for a second, and I think I'm gonna go ahead and put it here. Still thinking about this. So that's the thing, is that we really have to think about our choices because they affect the overall composition when we're done. So, yeah, I don't know. All right, final decision. I think I'm gonna place it right here. I think. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick this up take it over to my scrap paper, put glue on it. And line this up. Okay. All right, we're ready to move on to the next piece. So we're just gonna keep doing this. Do I throw that out? No, I don't. I'm gonna keep it. Okay, so I'm gonna put that down. Okay. So I'm putting all the pieces back together. Okay, lining this up so I get my placement right. And the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to pick this piece up when it was here, and I'm going to flip it out. So when it lines up, it should look like that, okay? And that means this piece is going to get glued right here. Okay, so now I'm going to glue those down. So I put it here like this. If I rotate it and flip it, I know it's going to come back over here, so I'm going to line this up so that when I put this down, it will be in the right spot. I know that this piece is going to get glued to shift just a tiny bit. So this piece will get glued down here, so I'm going to pick it up. Woo! It's like doing surgery if any of you guys want to be brain surgeons or any type of surgeon. Fine motor skills, guys. All right, so next, what I'm gonna do, I feel like one of my pieces is a little bit off. Is I'm going to glue this one in place. So I'm gonna pick it up, take it over to my scrap paper, get my glue on it. Peel those off gently and be careful with them. Okay, so when I line this one up, it's going to line up right with the edges of this arrow. So I'm going to get that right in place. Okay. Done. So now let's move on to our next piece. Let's go ahead and do the one on this side. This is a nice, easy one in comparison to this one. So let's go ahead and take a break from that one for a second. Okay, I'm gonna put this back in its spot. Again, it's like putting a puzzle back together. Okay, we're gonna pick this up. We're gonna put it back in its spot, right? And we're gonna rotate it out from its spot. So that's gonna go right about there. All right, so now that I know its placement, I'm gonna pick it up, flip it over, and put the glue on the back. Okay. So remember, it was here, and pick it up and flip it. So I want to make sure that this side and all the other sides are pretty much exactly where they are supposed to be before I go ahead and glue this guy down. I'm checking those top edges. So if you get too hasty with your gluing, your final composition will have some issues. So take the time to line everything back up. Work slowly. Okay. And then we glue that in place. All right. Let's go ahead and keep going. So pick this up and cut out my next piece. So I'm not just going through here and cutting this stuff off, okay? So make sure you don't do that. Don't lose focus and get distracted and cut something off that you're not supposed to. Okay. So you can really start to see it coming together now that we've gotten a number of pieces cut out. So I still have some work to do cutting this one. All right. So remember, we put the pieces back together. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flip this one out. This one will be glued down on the inside. This one's gonna flip to the outside. So it's like you pick it up and you flip it out. This one's gonna go off my paper. And that's okay. We'll talk about what to do with that when that happens. So lining it all back up. So that's gonna go right there. Okay, so now I've got to glue these in place. So I'm just trying to line everything up. as much as I can with where it's going to be in the end. I'm going to do this piece first. So I'm going to pick it up, turn it over, rotate my scrap paper, especially because this is a really thin piece. And I'm going to go ahead and go slowly so you don't tear it. If you're having trouble getting it up off the paper, grab something that's thin or sharp. You don't have long fingernails to lift that up. Okay. Trying to make sure this is lined up just so. And then I'm gonna put these in place. Okay. So next we take this one. And I did this one first because it helps me get the placement for this one in the right spot. So that's why I worked with this one first. So I'm gonna pick this one up. Come over my scrap paper. Put my glue on it. I'm going to line that up right between the two lines from the arrow before. Press that down like this. Okay, let's go ahead and do our last two arrows. Okay, put the puzzle back together. It's not really a puzzle, but I think you know what I mean. Okay, so put this back in its spot. Make sure it's going the right way. That's why I said refer to it as a puzzle. And then I'm gonna flip it and see. Direction right here. Okay, so I can flip it over and put glue on it. Okay. So that's glued down there. We have one last piece to do. Remember, I'm going to keep every single piece. And I only ever cut on my pencil lines. Get this put back in place. So again, it's like putting a puzzle back together. Hopefully you guys are good at puzzles. Well, the piece that I'm going to need. Okay. Now, this is why we work one piece at a time, guys. That was there. So if I flip it, it will go right here. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna glue that little guy down. It's important, and I don't wanna lose him. So I'm gonna pick him up, flip him over, I'm also going to glue this piece down next, so I'm going to pick it up. Now I can finish cutting this apart now that those pieces are back in place. Once I have that piece cut off, remember, put it back in place, and then you're going to be flipping it out this direction. So I'm going to go ahead and put glue on the back. It will be getting glued there. Okay. Two more pieces, guys, and we're done. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this one down, saving this one. It's going to go right there. So I'm going to flip it over, put some glue on the back. I would not recommend using Elmer's glue for this project, and the reason is Elmer's glue is going to make your paper wrinkle. So hopefully you're using a glue stick, but if you didn't, remember this is our practice one. This is why we practice these techniques. Art can be pretty challenging despite what people tend to think about it. As you guys know, not everybody gets an A in art. There's a reason. It takes a lot of thought. It takes a lot of skill. Okay, so we have got this part down. And now we're going to take this piece, which is going to be flipping up here, like that. And we're going to put glue on that piece. And then we'll come back and put in the very last piece. Woo! Which is sometimes the most challenging piece to glue down. All right, wowzers, we're almost done. So now what we have to do is take this center piece, right? Because it's really important for our composition. And we've got to pick it up, and we've got to know which side we're putting the glue on. So be thoughtful. So I'm going to pick this up. I'm going to turn it over on my scrap paper, and I'm going to put glue on the back of this. Pick it up carefully. And make sure you have an idea of where it goes, because if you get it back in the wrong spot, it's going to be not so great. So I'm going to kind of start by lining up these spots here. There. I'm not going to press everything down super firmly, because if I need to move or adjust something, I want the ability to do that. So I'm putting everything down just with a light touch right now. I really want those two pieces to line up, so I'm gonna okay, so we're gonna go ahead and let that dry, and we'll talk about some tips for cleaning things up, moving some pieces. Let's say you got something and it's glued down in the wrong spot, or something needs to be adjusted. we'll talk about how to do that. There you go. Take some thought and some focus. You've had some practice, so hopefully this is going to prepare you to work on your own. The one last thing I'll talk about here is what you can do with this. You can just turn your paper over, use your scissors to trim directly beside it. So this whole process, just the cutting, the gluing, took almost an hour. This is not something that can be rushed. It is something that you are going to have to think about and take some time with, okay? So plan accordingly, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with.